If spring is at first timid to show its face, hiding under the frosty cloak of winter for many March mornings, come April, the picture changes from dark to light. When the maples have leafed out and set their winged seeds, temperatures around the garden are ideal for vegetative growth. Greens grow overnight, nourished by the gentle spring showers. As May arrives, the leafy greens, which were once spindly dots of viridian tarnishing the brown ground, become exuberant proper plants in their adolescent growth spurt. If at first we may be timid to harvest our edible treasures, lest we weaken a nascent plant, for soon we may be flooded with too many leaves in this yearly glut. It's hard to believe that about 60 days exactly to the date is when I sowed this bed here, and just seeing the lush growth ever since, all the plants have thrived, especially the kale. The arugula is already flowering, the parsley is starting to give. I know I'll get several harvests from this, but just seeing this stage is really encouraging. The kale I had planted in my protected raised bed was at the perfect stage of ripeness to be harvested with abandon. During this golden stage of its life cycle, while it's still young and tender enough to have delicate flavor, but before the hordes of pests descend to devour it. So I took the opportunity to do some thinning or harvesting, or as I like to call it, harvesthinning. I had sown the kale directly on the ground in rows closely spaced together. This style of sowing is more conducive to growing baby leaves, treated as cut and come again salad. For kale to mature properly and produce large leaves, it needs space to grow. Ideally, each kale plant would need to be 12 inches from each other. My plan was to remove the excess growth and eat it. I have already gotten several harvests from this kale. For about 2 to 3 weeks, there has been constant replenishment of leaves. It's almost like when I take leaves away to harvest, the next day I look at it and it seems like I didn't take any of them. But there are a few problems happening, as I've shown. There are some caterpillars that have taken hold, and I knew that because I saw butterflies flying around here. Some things I do like to see. I see that there are some resident spiders that have taken advantage of even the structure to build their webs, and that's good so that they can control certain pests. But to be able to control better the production and the pest pressures in this bed, I'm going to do something that I like to call harvesthinning. By removing plants, I would have less plants to take care of. And harvesthinning is nothing more than thinning out your plants while you harvest. That way it's not much of a chore. You're not just thinning and throwing things away. You're actually getting things out of the garden just like a harvest, but you're opening up space. The reason why I want to open up space is first for the kales that do remain, they can grow to their full maturity with larger leaves, and also because that way there will be less space or nooks and crannies for insects to hide. And I know that the worms are probably all over the scale. If there are less plants that I can harvest continuously, keep up on top of it, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And if I see some worms, I can take them out by hand. At least that's my plan. We'll see how that pans out as the season progresses. And by worms, of course, I meant caterpillars. These cabbage caterpillars hatch from eggs laid by a white butterfly that keeps depositing eggs until fall. So caterpillars they're very hungry. They'll eat everything very fast and grow really big fast. So if you're going to control them by hand, you have to take them out before they get numbers that are large enough to completely destroy the plant. It's just a matter of getting on top of your planting and keeping an eye out. That's the only way if you are not trying to do sprays or anything like that. So unfortunately, we had to take these out and squish them.
If you want to prevent the moths from laying eggs, you can also use a row cover to physically block them. However, they must be applied over hoops early enough before they start flying around in April. Other than that, you can control them by handpicking, but it will take more work. I'll be back right after this commercial.
So my goal here is to see which plants are the strongest and leave those established and completely take out the smaller ones so that there's more space and there are more resources for the ones that have established stronger roots to succeed. This should leave me with just a few kale plants at the end. It's probably closer to the spacing that usually are recommended to have kale growing. Probably at least, I'll say, at least 6 inches to a foot from one plant to the other. I think this is going to make management easier to manage the pests and keep up with the harvest, because if I don't do that, it's just going to be a breeding ground of pests. I do know how much pests love kale. Everything loves kale, frankly. Probably because it's very nutritious. Has a lot of nutrients packed in it compared to other greens. Since you're harvesting, it doesn't seem like a waste.
In previous years, from midsummer to fall, my kale has been afflicted with all sorts of pests, including these caterpillars that skeletonize all the leaves. However, in my last garden, harlequin bugs were more of a menace, since I could generally keep up with the caterpillars by handpicking. I could only hope that the harlequins would not be making an appearance in this new place. Despite being named after a clown-like persona, harlequin bugs are no laughing matter. On the other hand, the presence of caterpillars does not worry me that much. It is possible to manage these caterpillars only by handpicking, but you must be vigilant and check all leaves, front and back every other day or so, removing caterpillars and eggs. Having less kale plants overall is great, because that makes things easier to handle. I was going to end up with about 8 to 10 plants in this bed, which seemed right for its size, considering other things were growing here as well. These caterpillars are host specific, so they only eat leaves from the cabbage family, which includes broccoli and cauliflower, but they would never attack my Swiss chard or parsley. After I was done harvest thinning, the bed did look much less lush, but that would change in time as the remaining kale would use up the new open space to grow larger.
The bed does look much sparser now. The plants are well spaced. All I have to do is to check the back of the leaves, make sure that if I see any worm, I remove it. There's going to be a need to keep up with worm removal for the next days, because there are less leaves, so if there are any worms that I miss, they're going to start eating these last leaves, and the plants do need the leaves to regenerate. But even though it does look drastic now, not as beautiful as it did before, in just a few days this is going to change. I am confident that the kale is just going to be able to grow much faster due to less competition, more water to each plant. And since I have a very thick layer of mulch already installed, I really doubt that weed pressure is going to be a problem. So it's more a case of looking and seeing if there are any worms and controlling them so that they do not grow bigger and destroy the whole crop. And from now on, it's a matter of being able to harvest them a lot so that I can keep up with controlling the worms. And that way, I hope to have kale for a longer period of time, always available to be eaten daily.
For some odd reason, I kept calling the caterpillars worms, but no matter what I called them, they would need to be controlled for me to have any significant harvest. Unfortunately, pest control is just a fact of gardening and raising food. I wish it wasn't the case. I don't mind sharing a bit with the animals and insects, but in some cases, if you don't do it, you lose the whole crop.